Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mic Check 2. My name is Rachel, and we have
Ajai
and Sean.
And today we are joined by...
Hello, LaToya Shields here, and I am a social worker, and I am here to have a good time and talk about drug recovery. Happy to be here.
Yes, we're happy that you're here. Thank you so much for joining us.
How long have you been in social work? I have been in social work for about 22 years.
I know that's right. Yeah, that took me
That's
back.
a career. That's a career.
Professional, yes.
Yes.
So it's safe to say that you know a little bit about drug recovery. So we're going to go ahead and just dive right into it.
Yes. So since 2000 in the U.S., there have been about 700,000 drug overdose deaths. So that's why this is a very important topic. We know drug usage is out there, but when it goes that far as to people dying...
Yeah, I feel like it's not talked about enough. Like, we don't really know, really what to look for and different things like that. So, can you kind of tell us, the stages of drug recovery?
Yeah, there are 6 stages. Six of them. And I'm going to say substance use recovery instead of drug recovery.
Yes.
Just because we want to be less thematic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when you're talking about substance use, you want to look at people's readiness. And that determines what stage someone is in. So there's 6 stages. There's a pre-contemplation stage. That means the person is not thinking about, they're not trying to hear what y'all have to say when y'all trying to help them with some treatment. They're not thinking about any of that. Then there's a contemplation stage. There's a moment where they're like, you know what? I may want to change. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to get the support or the help that I need. And they're just moving along. And then there's a preparation stage. They're committed to change. They're trying to figure out what change looks like for them. They're trying to see what changes they need to implement in their life. And then there's the action phase where they're actually taking steps to do the things that they need to do to stay healthy, to stay sober. Then there's maintenance. That means that they have achieved the goals. They're not... they're working their steps. They are maintaining the process. And then stage 6 could be a stage 6A or stage 6B. It could be termination, which means that substance use is no longer a threat. They're not tempted to use a substance. That's not an issue for them anymore in a sense to where they're tempted to use. And then there's reoccurrence, or what some people call relapse. And so those are the 6 stages. And people can hop in and out of those stages at any time. It doesn't have to be clockwise or counterclockwise. They can jump in and out of, they can be in pre-contemplation 1 month and action the next, or reoccurrence 1 day. And those are the 6 stages.
So, and again, it's safe to say that it's not going to be a perfect linear plan, just because these are the 6.
Yeah, it's very individualized, and when you're talking about substance use, it's tailored to how that person is motivated, and it's not linear, and it's a lifelong process, actually.
Oh.
Lifelong. So I guess my question would be, how do you even know somebody has an issue, or even within yourself?
Signs.
Yeah, a sign. Because before you even get to the stages, you have to have, I guess, what we call an issue. So with your substance abuse, how do you know?
I mean, I feel like...
I love how she has her little, her notes here, y'all. If y'all watching on YouTube, she's flipping through her little paper.
I just want to make sure I provide y'all with the right information.
We love that.
But there are lots of different identifiers, indicators. The biggest indicator is, substance using. If you're talking about a substance that's probably illegal, but it doesn't have to be. It could be prescription medication, or it could be alcohol. Alcohol is very legal. Lots of people like to have margaritas at 5 o'clock after work, and that's not an issue. But the signs that you look for is when someone is having a very difficult time removing themselves from that substance. So it's repeated. It's, there's excessive use, but they can't stop. Maybe their physical, the physicalness of their body is changing. They're gaining weight. They're losing weight. They're not able to sleep. They have tremors. You can look at someone's eyes. If my eyes may be red today because I'm sleepy. However, this is a one-time thing, with bloodshot eyes for me. If I go to sleep tonight, I'm going to be fine tomorrow. But if you're looking at someone who's continually using, you may be able to see that their eyes are bloodshot. You may be able to see that their pupil size is changing. Those are some of the things that you may be able to notice. But the biggest one is when someone can not push away from the substance or the alcohol.
Like when they come into work with their
you can smell it on them.
When they're in their
coming
bag.
through the pores. Or they can't leave the house without it. They got the flask everywhere they go. Not just on Saturday nights or weekends. It's everywhere, and they're sneaking it. They're drinking at work. They're risking important things in life. They're risking relationships. They're risking employment. That's when you can tell that someone may have a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, I always say if it's interfering with your day-to-day life.
If it's interfering with your day-to-day,
that's a problem.
Yeah, I don't know, because it's like, when you go to the doctor's office and they're always like a St. Hope when they check you out, they're like, how often do you drink? I know a lot of people are like, social. And then like the doctor's just like, now they're getting smart, like define socially. What does that look like for you?
No, I actually.
Go ahead.
Okay. I mean, it's not funny, but I was like, okay. So I'm one, like, whenever people come and do intake, I ask them that question about how often do you use drugs or alcohol? Well, it's two separate questions. So I had this patient, and I said, any drug usage in the past year? And he was like, yeah, a little bit. And I was like, oh, what drug and how often? And he was like, cocaine, socially. And I was like, socially? He was like, yeah. I only do it when I'm with other people. And I said, well, how often are you with other people? He was like, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I said, okay. That's a different definition. But he really went social, when I'm with other people. And I'm like, socially, no.
Yeah, because like social for me is like every other weekend when I'm like kid free or something. I get to have a little beverage every now and then. But social for some people is like Monday through Sunday. Yeah. Ask harder questions. That's what they be like. Yeah. Next question. And they're not even realizing like they have an issue. Like, so I guess that's like really important to define, like, really, can you take yourself away from that, and like what does that look like? And not like just one day and be like, oh yeah, I didn't drink today.
No, I really be asking the questions. I'm like, out of the 7-day week, how often do you drink? Then they be like, ooh, listen. They be like 3. I be like, and on those 3 days, how many drinks do you? I remember somebody tried to tell me socially, but the man said he was having like 12 drinks. I was like, you are binge drinking every weekend. Like,
would that be a sign?
That could be a sign.
Okay.
That could be a sign. Binge drinking is very dangerous, depending on body size, depending on gender, because, females handle alcohol intake differently than men. That could be very dangerous. Could be deadly. Mm-hmm. Could be deadly.
Now, when it comes to that, I know sometimes people frown upon if, like, let's say me and you are like talking outside of here and we're having a conversation. It's like, girl, you've been kicking back a lot. Is everything okay? Are you going? What could be like a good or a healthy boundary or a way to kind of put it out there?
Like that you think that they may have a problem?
And you don't want to offend somebody, because like, let's say you're my good girlfriend. I don't want to offend you, but it's like, I'm concerned, but...
Yeah. In my experience, if you're concerned about somebody, some of that good girlfriend or that's my homeboy, you have to put some of that to the side. So the best way to approach it is really timing. So you want to identify a good time and then make sure that you're not going to, throw out any judgments. Mm-hmm. That's another thing. But after you find a good time, find a good location, get your talking points together, then the best way to approach it is directly. Mm-hmm. and in love. If that's your friend, if that's your family and you're concerned, then that's the best way to do it. Non-judgmental, making sure you're not at the family reunion is not the good time.
Right.
In front of all the people, it's not a good time. But it could be you invite them to maybe go to the park and y'all are walking and talking and you're just like, hey, I noticed. And then take it from there and then kind of read the room, because you have to go back to the thing that we talked about at the beginning of the conversation is someone's readiness. Sometimes the people are not ready to hear what you see.
I like that.
They're not ready to hear
Not
what
ready
you
to
see.
hear what you see.
Yeah, so you just have to, the best, like I said, get your environment together. Don't be judgy. Nobody needs all the judgment. Usually the person who is using already has enough judgment because they know what they're doing.
Right.
That's why they're probably
They have,
hiding.
yeah, they have guilt, they have shame, so they don't need additional things or any other challenges from other people. And just directly, this is a direct thing because it's really life or death. I tell people that all the time. So it's nothing to teeter-totter with. If you're going to ask the question, ask it. If you don't want to ask it, then maybe get somebody else to. But it can be life or death for someone. So
And I won't say 9 times out of 10, but a lot of times when you ask that question, the person is more than likely to be offended off top. They're going to be, or at least not even offended, but they're going to be extremely defensive. Like, yo, where's this coming from?
yes, when they're not ready to hear what you see, you're going to get the defensive. You're going to get, no, I'm okay. I'm doing what everybody else is doing, and you just have to, on the receiving end, be ready for that. Don't take offense by their offense. You know what I'm saying? So
I got you.
I was going to ask that too, just not to cut you off, but like, how do you like avoid being guilt tripped into that? Like, you know how like they may like, well, now you don't have to be my friend. And you're like, I didn't even want it to go that far, but I like genuinely care about you. Now
that kind of goes back into like reading the room a little bit.
Yeah, it's reading the room. And then if that happens, if someone has that response, give it space and time. And then come back. And when you come back to the relationship a day or 2 or 3 later, it doesn't have to be about that topic. Just reassurance that you care and that you love them, and then carry on. Because with substance use, the person has to make the decision. You can call it out all day, but they really have to make the decision before they can make those changes.
Okay. I got a good tie-in. So let's say me and you are having a conversation. I admit to you I'm having a struggle with XYZ issue, XYZ substance. What would be a good set of steps to support your friend or family member, what have you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that should happen first, if they are coming to you and saying that they need help, is just to, first of all, just kind of offer reassurance and thank you for being bold and courageous. And I know that this can be scary, like giving them some of that, just reassuring them that things will be okay eventually.
We're not just gonna automatically, we're gonna put you in rehab like right now.
No, because recovery looks different for everyone. So sometimes, I mean, I've been in the field for a really long time, and I know people who have recovered without going or stepping a foot in a treatment facility. They've done some other things. They've used mindfulness. They've used recovery support services. They've used some traditional models like AA and things like that. And so they never went to treatment.
So just to reiterate, so just because you may have some kind of a substance abuse issue, you don't necessarily mean, I need to check into a facility.
It doesn't always mean that. Okay. So that's when you need to get some licensed professionals involved and get an assessment. And that assessment will kind of determine what level of care is needed.
So we did mention not needing necessarily going into treatment centers. Can we talk a little bit about like what outpatient versus inpatient would look like?
So if a therapeutic treatment option is the way that someone wants to go or that they need to go, you have residential or what they call inpatient. And that is where, I mean, you're going to be able to get kind of around the clock support. You're going to have, there's going to be therapeutic groups, there's going to be individual counseling, there's going to be a lens of education, and you are kind of moved into a facility for 30 to 90 days and have all of these support systems in place for the 30 to 90 days around the clock. And then there is what we call IOP, so intensive outpatient treatment, which is where usually this mode of treatment is used by folks who may not have the finances to go to residential treatment because treatment is expensive. And just depending on the level of care that they need, they're able to go to a facility during the day and get those same types of support. So the education, groups, individual treatment, therapy, and then they're able to go home. So that's the difference. Is one is you're a resident for 30 to 90 days. The other one is you kind of have some freedoms after your sessions are over. You get to go home and you don't maybe you don't have to miss being with your kids or being with your family, or maybe if work is involved, you don't have to miss work. And so those options, again, it's like I said, treatment's very individualized. So it just depends on what level of care that individual needs. I know people who have tried to, stop themselves. They've been to inpatient, they've been to outpatient, and they've been to all of those things multiple times. So it just depends on where the person is.
Have you noticed anything that's more like successful, I guess, with treatment? Just with everything coming out, because I know you said like mindfulness techniques and all that. Like, has anything like in your experience, I guess, been more successful?
It really just depends on the person and where that person is. I've seen success at all levels. I've seen someone be successful at residential treatment. I've seen them be successful in outpatient treatment. I've seen folks be super successful with connecting to like recovery coaches and just repositioning themselves in the community. So just making sure that they have a recovery supported centric family or a community that understands some of their challenges. I've seen people use yoga, meditation, mindfulness, exercise, some of those, anything that kind of just gets their mind off of it. People journal, and some of those things are not by themselves are not going to do it for some people. Sometimes they have to couple it with, maybe individual therapy that offers like CBT or DBT, therapeutic modals or whatever, but it's an individual process. And so whatever motivation that person has within them, they can use any of those things to get help and have a great life.
I have another follow-up question.
Come on.
She thinks she me today.
Yes, I'm acting like Asha. I just want to, I was going to say, I lost the question. Hold on.
Nope, that ain't me. Never mind.
Circle it back.
So I was going to say, you said most successful the people. I was gonna say that a lot of people, I feel like whether it's like a real substance, like everybody has like quote unquote like a drug of usage, like maybe like a shopping addiction or something that may take over. So like, is that common? Like when you give up the substance that you kind of see them like obsessed with something else? Because I know you mentioned exercise. So I feel like some people who are like OCD in the gym, like they're trying to like.
Sometimes people may replace.
Yeah.
I've seen that, and they are excessive with maybe it's not substance using, but now they're gambling all day and about to lose the house.
Right.
So from one vice to
taking
the next.
Taking out a second mortgage. I've seen it. But I've also seen less of that and more of people becoming in that maintenance piece where they are sustaining and maintaining and doing things that are beneficial. They're not going from one addictive behavior to the other. So in my experience, I've seen more of that. But I mean, you are going to have people who substitute because that's just easier for them to do. Yeah, they're hyper exercising, so now they in the gym every day, 9 days a week.
Yeah,
I mean,
doing the
2
most.
days. Yeah, doing the most.
Doing the most.
But
Yeah,
I think with a lot of talk around like mental health and triggers and stuff like that, that kind of helps people to realize, okay, hey, you know, maybe I indulge in alcohol too much, so maybe I shouldn't always be in the club, or maybe I shouldn't always do this. I think people are just like replacing behaviors or learning their triggers and understanding that it's a lifestyle change and a mindset change. So you can't just, because temptation is real. Let's be honest. Temptation is very real. And, you know, me personally, if I had if I felt like I couldn't control myself, I couldn't be around, you know, the same people who are doing the same things or looking at things from that way.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of stuff don't be successful.
Yeah, that's very true, because it's a lifestyle change. So that's why it's important for people to not hang with the same circles, unless some of those people in the circles are going to be able to identify and be supportive and understand your triggers and understand your temptations. That's why, you got to change the scene a little bit. Like, if alcohol is an issue, clubbing probably is not the way to go.
Right.
It's going to be everywhere. It's, and you just don't want to set yourself up for failure. So it's very important to have balance, and it's very important to shift your lifestyle in a way that's going to get you closer to your goal or help you maintain your goal of sobriety.
That's a good point. So I have a question about, so say you're the user now. So how do you kind of help them kind of cope through like the shame and guilt of like maybe like the damage they may have caused while they were on this addiction? Or
I think forgiveness is really big too. You have to be able to forgive people. And if you cannot, so if you are the person who was drowned in addiction for years and years, and you are at this place where you want to do better and you are doing better, and you're hanging around family they're bringing up the past, we don't need that. So the toxicity can go both ways with addiction. The person who is in their addiction, they can be toxic to their family members, and the family members may need to put up some boundaries, hold them accountable to things. But on the flip side, once the addicted person comes out of that, or they're trying to, maintain sobriety, they also need to get rid of the toxic people, and that could be a family member as well. So the boundaries go both ways. It's forgiveness, it's respect, it's if you're around people who can't support you, move away, get away, don't enter into those spaces, and that's on both sides. And it's really just holding people accountable with how that person wants to be treated.
And forgiveness is so important.
Yeah.
Just because that's real, especially like amongst families. I know a lot of families have a family member or maybe multiple family that struggle with some kind of a substance abuse. So forgiveness is a key factor of support.
Yeah, forgiveness and grace. And then I think it's really important to understand that addiction is a disease.
Yes.
So you have to treat people with the same grace, with the same level of forgiveness, with the same love and comfort that you would someone who has diabetes.
Right.
So, not calling out every single thing that they do when they're trying. When they're trying, you don't have to bring up what they did in 83. We don't have to do all that.
Right.
If they are actively trying. But forgiveness goes a long way. And understanding, like I said, it's a disease. This is not something people can turn off and on. If it's a true addiction, I'm not talking about misuse or overuse, which probably a lot of us have done in our lives. We've probably misused alcohol or overused, but we're not in addiction. But folks who are truly in addiction, they need people to understand that this is.
It's not a I think sometimes
it's a brain disease.
Yeah, it's a
right?
imbalance.
So helping, and that's where the education pieces come in. Like, the addictive person can help educate their families. And that's something that I did a lot. I did a lot of primary intervention, and with those programs, we're just educating people, helping them understand who their loved one is with an addictive behavior or someone who's trying to come out of that lifestyle.
I actually wanted to go back and ask you something real quick. I'm so sorry.
What you got?
So I wanted to go back to your 6 steps. One of them was essentially relapse, and that happens a lot. Because like you said,
it's a part of the step.
It's a part of the step. It's a part of the model. Yeah. It's not an off and on switch, and it happens. So how do you approach a friend or family member that relapses, because that's a whole different thing. Because let's say y'all worked for weeks to months,
maybe a year.
Y'all have made all these steps in the right direction, and then just at the flick of the wrist, boom, relapse.
I would think, not to cut you off, but I would think the first thing in my head would be to just ask them, is everything okay? Because sometimes, typically, like if people relapse, something triggers them to make them go back to the habit. So I think first would be to like check on them and to make sure that like everything is okay, or did somebody reappear from the past? Did something come up? Is it something that reappeared that you just successfully wasn't able to cope with, and so you went back to your initial coping mechanism, which was whatever substance you're working with?
Yeah. I just think education plays a huge role in this, again, in this whole, what do you do if someone relapses? That is part of the process. It's very few people who go through recovery and they don't end up back at square one. And so educating family members or support systems that this may happen. It may not, but it may. And when it does happen, you need to forgiveness and grace and understanding, and understand that they are fighting a disease and it's not necessarily a choice. And then again, I mean, I'd agree here that you do need to make sure people are okay, because something probably did trigger. And look at, just look at the person and try to help the person and not what they're experiencing. So just kind of separating the person from the disease and making sure that the person humanize the thing. Like, they're human. We make errors all the time. So recovery is a lot of grace. Like, I just think if people just grace folks the way that we get grace, I think the recovery process would be a little bit simpler. But yeah, relapse is a part of this thing, unfortunately.
I think it's all about just, in general, we have to just change people's perspectives and how they look at it.
Education.
Because if you think about it, let's put it really, really simple. You can look at it from somebody trying to do a lifestyle. It's because it's literally a lifestyle change with their diet. Think about how many times people be like, I'm going to start this diet.
Oh my God.
And they started the diet 5 times.
That was you. Deshaun is like his.
I'm going to drink 5 bottles of water a day. Girl, I'm on 1.
Yeah.
And it's 11:30 p.m. So,
So
it's the same thing.
I think you just have to change your perspective and how you look at it. I think once people get away from just being like, oh, but I'm not doing a substance, I don't have a substance, or I'm not using opioids, or I'm not using cocaine. But it's other places in your life where you had to start over a couple of times, and you don't have anybody pointing that in your face. So I feel like you should never do that to anybody else, because it is. I will personally never judge somebody off something I've never been through. You know what I mean? I've never used like cocaine or heroin, and I know that when you do it, it sends endorphins and all this. You get this euphoric feeling. I could never judge that because I don't know what that feels like. But to the next person or the person who's used it, it's like this, it's like this sensation that I would never be like, well, why are you doing it? You can't.
Right. I mean, I don't need to know why, but I just feel like sometimes it is hard to separate the person, especially if depending on that person's role in your life, how to separate them. So I think that's not talked about enough too. Just like with educating people, it's just like, okay, like how do you see this person to be who they're supposed to be, and not see them for this addiction when your whole life you just known them as the addiction. So it's just kind of like giving grace, but I guess like when grace doesn't work, like when do you know to set boundaries for yourself? Like, okay, this person may be the disease may be a little too much for me to handle.
And is that okay? I mean, I would, me personally, I would think that's okay, because then that affects the person's mental health as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So even if you recognize a sign like I'm trying, but you're not getting through to the person.
Yeah. So I'm not saying let's just let people walk all over you. I said earlier, you got to hold people accountable.
Right.
And even with addiction, you still have to hold people accountable, even though you want to help and you want to support. You have to think about your mental health and your emotional well-being as well. And so if their behavior or who they are is getting too much for you, then there is a conversation or not, and then there's just boundaries in place. And you operate off those boundaries until you don't have to.
Right.
And that could be forever or that could be never.
Right.
And
yeah, I feel like, you can give them grace. Yeah, you can give them, I still feel like you can set boundaries and give them grace. Because, like, for me, like, if it's somebody that I don't want to have any communication with, that doesn't mean, like, I need to go around and, like, dog them to everybody. You can still give them grace by, like, just being like, oh, they're on their own journey. Or, they're working it out. You know, when they be like, oh, why are you such and such not friends? You don't need to be like, girl, let me tell you what he was doing. You can just be like.
They wouldn't stop drinking, girl.
Yeah. And I can speak to this. I mean, one of the reasons why I do the work in the first place is because
the mic is on. Mic check.
I have addiction that runs all through my family. So there are moments where it's one of those things where you're like, gosh, I hate that for the person, but then it's like that is. There's help options, there's all of these things, and sometimes people don't want to change. You also have to remember that. So you're trying to hang on to this theory of change, and sometimes people just don't want to. Sometimes people stay in that pre-contemplative phase for a very long time, and I can have respect for that person, and I can say that person is my X, Y, and Z. I won't call names on here, but they are whoever they are to me, but I am not going to, if I am vulnerable, then there may be moments where I can't have communication with that person. Then there may be times where I can be like, hey, how y'all doing? How you doing? It's just taking care of yourself. And it's okay to do that as they figure out all those 6 stages and where they want to be. It's okay to do it.
Because some people can't stay in that stage 1. And you're just like, okay.
Yeah, they can be there for a long time. I'm talking decades. Because they can live there, sleep there, take a nap, park, ain't moving.
Yeah, they're comfortable. Comfortable.
Yeah.
It happens.
So, what is something that you would probably change in our current healthcare system as it approaches substance recovery? I know that's a loaded question.
The question is loaded. I have a lot of qualms with the healthcare system, just in general. But one of the things that the healthcare system does not do well, they don't educate the healthcare practitioners, number one. So that's first and foremost. When physicians are going through their rotations and their training, substance use education and classes on substance use, they get hours. They get hours. They're not getting semesters worth of information. They're getting hours worth of information. And so there's a lot of bias. Being someone in addiction is not one of those things. It's not a pedestal type of a thing. It's something that people don't understand. It's something that people, we in the Western, over here in Western America, and we judge people off what they wear. You ain't got the right shoe on, girl. So all of those behaviors and traits are in the healthcare system. So we don't train healthcare personnel, healthcare practitioners. We don't train them. We don't hold them accountable. And one of the issues that is really killing people, honestly, is because we don't integrate care. Substance use is not something you can address in silo. It needs to be an integrated type of care model that needs to happen. So because substance use has all these different characters. There's social, there's environmental, and they have all of these traits attached to it. And so a lot of times people are just trying to doctor or medicate one portion of that trait instead of holistically coming together to approach the person. And so integrated care would be fantastic. So getting primary care physicians, getting behavioral health practitioners all in the same room, social workers, whoever is working with that person, get them all in the same room, making sure they're on one accord and address the person in a holistic way versus just dosing pieces here or there.
I think that's a good point, just making it all like one. So it's not just like, because the doctors, they may just give you like a drug to like help you reduce the symptoms or wean you off the drug, and then like you don't go talk to a therapist. Like I think.
Yeah, I just think that
you have to get addicted to that
Yeah, you just have to sometimes also understand the root of a lot of addictions. And so a lot of the root of it is there's trauma, there's needs not being met, there's social inadequacies, there's all these different things that play a role. And so you have to have a team of people to address it. Or you're going to have that, or that person is not going to come out of these phases well.
True.
That was deep. For real.
Mic drop.
And that's all I have to say about the healthcare system today.
I do want to switch it up just a little, because we talk about recovery, we talk about support. Let's talk about worst case scenarios. So let's talk about a big thing that does happen. That's overdose. What could, and we'll switch it. Won't just say overdose from. We'll use we'll say drugs as our substance. What could be? I work in the nightlife industry on the side, so I've seen things that happen. So, what would you say from a professional standpoint would be signs of an overdose if you were to?
So you're talking about physical presence being diminished. You're talking about respiratory issues, so maybe slowed breathing. You're talking about someone looking clammy, feeling clammy. Someone, maybe their eyes are rolling back in their head. Maybe they're foaming at the mouth. You're looking at some of those types of things, and that is a real thing. I've seen a couple of incidences of those, but one of the things that we don't talk about a lot with overdose, and I'm just like taking your question and running with it. So I hope it's okay. Especially, I can speak to like the opioid. We're where we have an opioid infestation here in the Houston area, Texas, United States. And there's temporary relief, like to give someone Narcan. Y'all heard of Narcan? Yeah. Naloxone. That is something that we need to be more open about talking about Narcan. We need to be more open to outreaching with it. It's over the counter. So you can go and purchase it at CVS or Walgreens.
I didn't know it was over the counter.
Yeah, it is. Texas has a standing order for some years now. So you can go get it at CVS, Walgreens. You can pay for it outright. It's costly. But if you have some private insurances do cover it, but also connecting with some of the behavioral health or substance use agencies here who are required through their outreach efforts to give out Narcan. So I'm not going to say one agency or the other. We can talk about it offline because I don't want to miss nobody and then
be in an uproar.
But passing it out. Literally, if people, hey, we know you have an issue, Sally, Billy. Take this with you. Give it to your friends when y'all going out. So if something happens, they can bring you back to life for the moment until they can get you some stable support. So Narcan is one of the things that it should be in clubs. It should be in restaurants. Everybody should have access to it. And so harm reduction. Ain't necessarily telling people to stop, but
it's a wake up.
Yeah,
I've seen it, and it's a very scary sight.
It's very scary.
It really is. Like it. I had a moment where I pictured it because I've seen it, and when you see somebody just fall out and they're completely incoherent, eyes are just gone. Like, oh my god,
they're not breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
and
scary.
You're like, call 911, but in the meantime, while 911's coming, what do we do?
What do we do? Yeah, Narcan is a, I don't want to say a wonder drug, but it's a wonder drug. Right. Can be given nasal or injection. Nasal injection may trigger people who use other drugs that are needle based. So nasal.
So do you just
go ahead.
Like a little bit more on Narcan? Is it like do you just
like an EpiPen kind
of do you just inject it?
You can inject or you can spray. It's a nasal spray. And what it does is it sets on the receptors and it reverses the opioid off the receptor. So it brings the person back to life. Now, when they come out of that, they're not going to be nice. They might be swinging, but they're gonna be alive, so that's good. They're gonna be alive. So it's like once you do your little sprays and Sally come on up and she's just kind of move back, give her some space, give she them some space, and they're not gonna be happy. They're not supposed to be, and there's a lot of different effects happening with their body, but they're gonna be able to live.
So what happens if we don't have Narcan? We've called 911. No, I'm not even saying just in like a bar or a nightclub setting. Like let's say if you walk in on your brother or sister and they're just laid out, what is there anything that we can do until 911 gets there?
I mean, you can do resuscitation efforts if you need to, mouth to mouth, old school CPR. But that may not work. And so the best bets, again, it's education, making sure that, I did outreach for a really long time. So I was out on the streets and I'm just telling people, hey, we know that you are struggling. Or people will come to me and say, I am struggling. And we just make it as casual as exchanging phone numbers. Hey, girl, here's Narcan, Just making it less of a thematic type of thing. Just making it more of a everyday thing. I think that's what we have to do. Because some of the other efforts, if it's an opioid, that's probably not going to be, if Narcan is not involved, that may not end well, to say the least. That it just may not. But if it's another drug, possibly CPR, but that may not do it. So that's why we have to, educate the community, have some of these things in places where they need to be. And I even tell people harm reduction. Like, listen, if you're going to be X, Y, and Z, and if you want to live, let people know. That's how outreach was for me. Like we know you smoking, that's fine, but smoke around somebody.
So they can help you out.
So they can help you out.
So I know you spoke that education is very important, and I feel like education starts with children. So is there, and I feel like in school systems, they you may get like a class an hour and they'd be like, don't do drugs, or the DARE program.
Remember the little
lion? The little DARE dog comes and he's like, dare to be different, and
That you remember the whole presentation?
Yeah, I remember.
Was DARE the bear? No,
it was a little lion.
That was Smokey the bear.
Smokey.
That was the fire. That was the fire guy.
There was a lion.
There was a lion. Okay, so I remember, and I have a little girl, so they just did the DARE ribbon red week.
Red blah 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 blah. Red ribbon week.
Yeah, so they wear their little ribbons and they're like, I'm drug free. And then I feel like after elementary they don't talk about it anymore. So from 1st to 4th grade, great, you don't do drugs. And then it's 5th grade, I have a nephew in 5th grade, and I heard some stories about some kids. They just start early, and I feel like literally in school you get maybe 1 hour class of don't do drugs. The lion comes, he roars, and you think you're almighty. But then what happens next? So how would you talk to children?
Yeah, the first thing I'm just going to say is I think talking about substances, alcohol is not necessarily the responsibility of the school.
Right.
That's a parent thing or caregiver or whoever has oversight of that child. And honestly, you talk to them like you talk to them about everything else. Directly, honestly. I would share age-appropriate implications or consequences. If you're talking to a 5th grader, you may not want to mention you could die, in that way, but just some implications of it. But what you don't want to do is manipulate the message. You don't want to shortcome the message. You don't want to beat around the bush per se. These they're hard conversations, but if you have them using a direct message, be concise, be clear, and then also afford an opportunity for questions. Parents are not comfortable talking about substances. Oftentimes because they are misinformed themselves, they don't know. And then it's just a hard topic. Nobody wants to think about their child being at risk. But the way that we're living today, you can get anything that you want You can order it off the internet. I'm talking about it can be in the doorstep in 2 seconds. You can get marijuana from, you might be able to get it from the teacher. I don't know. It's so prominent. Everything is so accessible. But talk to your kids directly. This is not one of those conversations where you don't want to burden a bee. You want to say what it really is. Age appropriate, but then also leave room for conversation and questions. And the don't do it. As a child, I was very stubborn. So everything you told me don't do,
I'm gonna do it.
I probably did it before it was time for me to do it. And so that just doesn't work. So it's very conversational. It doesn't have to be, oh my God, it doesn't have to be super staged or anything like that. And if you're talking to your kid, I'm plugging this in. So if you're talking to your kids on a regular basis anyway, this is not going to be a abnormal conversation.
Yeah. And it's really, with the kids in the schools now, it's never too early.
Yeah,
it's never too early. The teacher.
Yeah.
Or people bring it from home. That's what I always try to tell people, like, yeah, we know what goes on. You know what goes on in your household, but you do not know what goes on in other people's household. People have older siblings. People go through stuff. People go through people's purses.
That's so true.
That's so true.
Well, people bring it to school, like, oh, look at these Flintstones vitamins.
Yeah,
child and took ecstasy. Now what?
A lot of kids. Just a quick plug, and I don't know if we have time, but I'll say it anyways. A lot of substance using modals are by prescription medication. So it's not even like it's illegal. It's like you didn't tell your kid what this bottle was. They in there playing with it, and now they taking Vicodin. And then if they have an addictive body, like if their body takes that in and all of that type of thing, that could lead to an addiction just because you didn't close your cabinet, or you didn't say don't touch, or you didn't. So just conversation, man. Like, talk to your babies.
Well, not the Vicodin.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, the Vicodin.
Okay. Ajay, you gonna wrap it up?
Yeah. What do I usually say? I feel like I haven't been here 3 weeks.
You have the floor.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you.
We appreciate you so much.
I think we kind of really got to that, but we would just like to thank you for coming and doing your favorite thing, educating people. We learned a lot. I learned I knew what Narcan was. I didn't know that it could be administered nasally though. So that was.
Or that they wake up aggressive. I didn't. Yeah, that's a good tip for sure.
But yeah, so we really do appreciate it. I'm gonna give you the floor. Do you have anything else that you would just like to share? Anything that you feel like we missed? Any resources?
Where can someone find you?
She said, "Oh, don't come looking."
I'll be in the streets. Currently, can I say where I work? Yeah, okay. I work at the Network of Behavioral Health Providers. And so we are our membership organization, 45 plus organizations that treat substance use and mental health. And we partner with those agencies on a merit of things to make sure that we promote and we educate and we inform, and we bring behavioral health, substance use to the forefront of the community. So that's where I work now. But there are a lot of resources out there, so you can reach me. In the streets.
In the streets. Find her in these Houston streets. So if y'all see her, wave her down, be like, I saw you in them Houston streets.
I'm going to pause right quick. Does anybody want to, isn't like a hotline you could call? Do anybody want to plug in the hotline, like for in case of an emergency at the end of this?
Is there
like when we did suicide? We kind of plugged it in.
You talking about the 988? There's not really.
Is there a jerk?
So I will tell you, so I will say that if you are a family member, are ready to get some support, a place to start, I will plug one agency. It's the Council on Recovery. Okay. The Council on Recovery has the OSAR department, which means that's outreach, screening, assessment, referral, and they are able to assess and get you moving in the right direction, and referral wise. So they are an excellent place to start. They can pay me later for plugging them, but no, I was playing. But yeah, the Council on Recovery is a good place to start.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
We're actually familiar with them. We do some of our meetings around them. So that's nice. Okay. So we thank you again for joining us. This has been very educational. And I feel like I learned something, and we have some resources available. And find you in the streets. We're gonna come look
in the
you.
streets.
Now, when I see you, wave back.
If you can find me in the streets, I'ma wave. If you can find me, I'ma speak. I appreciate you all having me. This has been fun.
No, thank you so
And
much for your time.
informative. I think we touched on some very important topics. This being
One of them.
One of them. Like I think people just want to shun drug usage. Like, okay, come on, be for real.
But it's
BFFR.
It's a real thing.
It is. It is. But thank you for joining us. If you ever need more information, you can visit us at offeringhope.org, or to schedule an appointment, you can give us a call at 713-778-1300, or you can use the chat feature on the website.
And always remember, here at St. Hope, you're more than just a number.